We begin. Like we say, it is not like this every Sunday. These are the words of our late Minister Emeritus Jack Mendelson. Here in this sanctuary of ancient dreams and wisdom and beauty, we come to grow, to be healed, to stretch mind and heart, to be challenged, renewed, to be helped in our own continuing struggles for meaning and for love, to help build a world with more justice and mercy in it, to be counted among the hopers and doers. In the face of cynicism, darkness, brutality around us and within, we seek to align ourselves with a living community that would affirm rather than despair, that would think and act rather than simply adjust and succumb. Here we invite the spirit of our own humanity and the healing powers under, around, through, and beyond it to give us the nerve and grace, the toughness and sensitivity to search out the truth that frees and the life that maketh all things new. Those are the key words. O life that maketh all things new. Our first hymn is number 12. And we join in the words of our unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So be it.
Good morning. Welcome to the First Parish in Bedford, gathered in love and service for justice and peace. How many people walked or biked over here to church this morning? That's great. That's really, really good. Here in this church, human beings have gathered for centuries, seeking a higher purpose and deeper life than they could find alone. Here, the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is at hand. We are Unitarian Universalists, which means we are united by shared values rather than by creed. Justice, compassion, love, and service, this is how we aspire to live our faith. I'd just like to say, A very big welcome to anybody who's new or visiting this morning. I know there's some people who might not have been in the doors before, and we're just so glad that you are here. Today we are celebrating our annual Spirit of Democracy service, and this is in honor of the late Reverend Jack Mendelson. And John is going to tell us more about all of that in a minute or two. Following the service, join us for Community Hour through the doors behind me. You can stop by the welcome table, tell us a little bit about you, find out a little bit more about us. You can also fill out a blue connection card that can be found in the pews. That's a way to read our newsletter, get a call from a minister or someone on the lay pastoral team or membership team, and you can leave that in an offering basket later or give it to an usher. We're not going to have candles of joy and sorrow this morning, but a member of the lay pastoral team will be over here at our candle stand if you would like to light a candle in private. After today's service, you can continue to learn from Bill McKibben and share your thoughts. You will be introduced to him in a minute. But after the service, right here in the sanctuary at 11:30, you can come on in, you can bring your coffee, but don't spill it in here with the new rugs. And that will be great. Also, at 12:30, there is a free public narrative training, and it's up in room 202, the Overlook Room. This is offered by Evan Seitz and his colleague Marla Markham. And we are all invited to come, learn how to make a quick connection with a person that can lead to a meaningful collaboration on further action. We'll learn fundamental skills used in all relational organizing, skills that we'll build on over the next year as we develop our climate justice work. It will be fast-paced, interactive, and will introduce basic skills that we'll use in our organizing, and there is also free pizza for all who attend. At 12:45, I admit they do overlap. That's a little unfortunate, but it's because so much is going on and we're so happy to be together. At 12:45 is our wisdom tea, and this is a tea that honors folks who've been around here for many years, 25, give or take. No worries if it's a little bit loose there. We're just glad to have elders who pass on their wisdom, and that is at 12:45 in the common room. So welcome one and all, and now Janet Welby has an announcement.
Each year at this time, we like to honor our members of the choirs that have the nerve to graduate and leave me. So will Linda Bittenson and Emma Valentine please come up here? I absolutely love these two. I have so many stories. I will tell you just one short story for each one of them that are a memory for me. Linda, do you remember when you played Mrs. Potts in Beauty and the Beast? And one night you came out on stage. There were supposed to be about 6 actors, and there was just you, right? It was one of the best soliloquies I've heard at First Parish.
The soliloquy was a monologue.
A monologue. It was a monologue. She took everybody's part and put it into one monologue. Emma, I remember from my first day when we were rehearsing on Sunday mornings, and she's very talented. She's played leads in our musicals, solos, but my best memory of Emma was when I was in the kitchen talking to my intern, going over things, and Emma was on the other side of the kitchen, and she said, "Janet, you work just way too hard." So she's always taking care of me. So we'll be seeing them again at Christmas, I'm sure. I'd like to present you to remember me and to remember the choirs. These are little djembe necklaces, and you can wear them with your prom dresses. Thank you, guys. while they're setting up. We are singing a song that says it is a traditional Zulu song, and I want to make a point that this is not an African song. This is a classical musician's rendition, inspired by a Zulu folk song, inspired by some of the rhythms and sounds of South African music. However, it's important to remember that it is a hybrid. It is a collaboration. We want to always honor the fact that we are not appropriating someone's music, that we are using the music. Music does evolve. Otherwise, we'd still be singing Gregorian chant or something earlier than that. However, I want to make a point that this is a classical piece inspired by an African piece, and it's quite nice.
So before kids and teachers go off to their ingathering and classes, we're going to hear just a little bit from Evan Seitz. Evan Seitz is a guy that grew up in this church, and he is a community organizer. Remember, wasn't Barack Obama a community organizer? Same sort of thing. And we have recently stipended, through our Social Responsibility Council, Evan to work with us as our climate justice coach, advisor, instigator, provocateur. He is our inside agitator. He is the one who is here to kick our butts on the topic of climate justice. So in your debut butt-kicking story, you're on, Evan.
All right, thanks. Well, it's great to be here this morning. It's great to see a packed church to come out and talk about climate justice. My own story, I actually decided to work as a climate justice organizer after working in Haiti for several years, and I'm going to tell you a story about my time in Haiti. So Haiti, for those of you who don't know, is a country in the Caribbean. It's on the island of Hispaniola. And in the Caribbean, it's very hot. Haiti has a very different climate from here. There's a rainy season and a dry season, and there's a hot season and a very, very hot season. And I did most of my work in the Central Plateau. There's a saying in Haiti that what's beyond mountains is more mountains. Mountains beyond mountains. And the Central Plateau is this beautiful high plateau with mountains beyond mountains. And every so often, most of Haiti's forests have been cut down. So you'll walk around and you'll see just these plains of grass and some trees. But every once in a while, there'll be a grove of mango trees. And I brought a mango to demonstrate. And mangoes fresh off the tree is one of the most delicious things you can imagine. And my friend who's Haitian showed me the best way to get a mango. He said, you don't want to get the mangoes on the ground. They might already be, fermenting or rotten. So you take a stick or a rock or another good mango, and you throw it up into the tree. And the mango trees are 30 or 40 feet high. And then the really ripe mangoes will fall. And then you run, and you catch the mango before it gets to the ground. So mangoes are a source of food for people in Haiti, of course. People, they sell them in Port-au-Prince, and they eat them locally. And a group of farmers decided, hey, the Haitian mangoes are some of the finest mangoes in the world. Let's export these mangoes. Let's make money. And so they did. They came together, and they said, all right, we're going to pick mangoes. So they picked the mangoes, and they put them onto a truck, and they shipped them. There's only one real port. There's actually two ports in Haiti, but I think these farmers shipped them to Port-au-Prince. It's at that time, about an 8-hour drive on very rocky, very bumpy roads. And these mangoes are delicate, and they're delicious and juicy. But it was like if you took a hammer and just pounded the mango. Ooh, right? So by the time you got to Port-au-Prince, even before it left the country, this mango was bruised. It wasn't worth anything anymore. And so they couldn't export their mangoes. And they said, oh no, what can we do? So they put their heads together. This is a group of very crafty farmers. They're called the Papai Peasant Movement. And they said, we can't fix the roads in Haiti, but if we pool our money and work together, we know we have a lot of sunlight. So we're going to build a dehydrator. And so they raised money, and block by block, they put concrete blocks together, and they painted them black, and then over the top of that, they put some plastic and painted that black, and they put a door in the front, and they put racks where they could put sliced mangoes, and then in the summer, the sun beating down, those mangoes begin to, put the mangoes in, and they begin to shrivel, and all of the water evaporates. And then you're left with something like this. And this you can export, and this cost $2.99 at Trader Joe's. And they didn't stop there. They said, when we put our minds together, we can solve some really big problems. And we also want to be able to eat when the mangoes aren't in season. So they dried mangoes for themselves, and they said, that's not the only way of preserving food. We can also make jam. So they built a jam-making factory. And I brought some here, which I'm happy to pass along to the RE program. You can try Haitian mango jam and also the dried mangoes if you like. And this was a real inspiration to me that people in Haiti, one of the poorest countries of the world, solve their problems by coming together. And I think that's a lesson for all of us.
Okay, kids and teachers are off to, you're going upstairs to room 202. And while they do that, we're going to sing Spirit of Life. If you don't know it, it's number 123. The rain stick has worked its magic. Freely we have received, freely give for the good work of this congregation within and far, far beyond its walls. Our morning offering will gratefully be received. Last Sunday, I took a group for a tour of Sleepy Hollow Cemetery over in Concord. There are many notables buried there, a lot of Unitarians, Emersons and Thoreaus and Alcotts, Hawthornes, not to mention Catherine Davis, who composed the Christmas carol, The Little Drummer Boy, Rumpa-Pum-Pum. And there is over there Mrs. Walter Bush, the first woman to have a driver's license in the United States. I don't know what her religion was. Nor do I know the religion of Sheila Shea. Sheila Shea's tombstone is there, her name and the years of her birth and death. And I tell people that this is the grave of Sheila Shea. And with enough pause for dramatic effect, we then go to the backside of her tombstone where it is engraved, "Who the hell is Sheila Shea?" Her family went to court to allow that to be engraved on the stone. She and her family wanted it, the cemetery did not, and the court agreed that she could do it. It is theological and will likely be asked of all of us. Who the hell is John Gibbons? Who the hell is Jack Mendelson? Who the hell is Bill McKibben? Well, Jack died 3 years ago, aged 94. Who the hell was he? He ministered in Indianapolis and Rockford, Illinois, and Boston at the Arlington Street Church, and Chicago, where he faced down the police red squads, and then here in Bedford, where he shook a lot of you up. Judith Frediani here was Jack's wife. There is a photo, I intended to have it up here, but it came in a couple of weeks ago of Jack meeting up with Fidel Castro and Jesse Jackson. Jack traveled with remarkable people. Jack was a liberal lion, perhaps the most distinguished Unitarian, then Unitarian Universalist minister of the 20th century. He went into ministry following the lead of other activist ministers like John Haynes Holmes, because he wanted liberal religion to be sensible and not stupid in relationship to modernity, in relationship to science and politics and democracy. Long before it was fashionable, if indeed it is fashionable, Jack affirmed that women's lives matter, and black lives matter, and gay lives matter. Jack wasn't always discreet about this. He nearly wrecked the Unitarian Universalist Association in 1969 when he led a walkout of our annual conference over issues of black empowerment. And even in his later years, I recall Jack leading a worship service with a transgender colleague, and Jack knew it was the right thing to do, though he couldn't quite figure out if the colleague should be referred to as him or her, and pretty much whatever Jack said, Jack got it wrong. But the point was that he was in the arena. He was willing to make mistakes he risked. Having a willingness to make mistakes is how change happens. One of my favorite of Jack's sermons was titled "A Heimlich Maneuver for America." And he began it this way. "Our country is choking on a scam," he said. "The manipulation of politics by religious absolutists and the manipulation of spiritual malaise by reactionary politicians. What is needed is a Heimlich maneuver, an intervention on behalf of life. In the Heimlich maneuver, someone with concern and skill extends prompt aid. Thought was required to learn how to do it. Will is required to do it. The aim is rescue. It's not just a mechanical procedure, it is a liberating act. The Heimlich maneuver is a metaphor of what religious liberals, in coalition with other caring religious bodies, must undertake. It is a metaphor of self-transcending energy, and of the respect all progressive and compassionate spiritual communities hold for the disciplines required to practice life-serving skills and to exercise redemptive powers. Well, I am pretty sure that Jack would say that Bill McKibben is trying to perform a Heimlich maneuver on this earth, or more precisely, a Heimlich maneuver on the powers and principalities and corporations and governments that are choking this earth. We are choking on fossil fuels, and we are choking on corporate constrictions on our democracy. Bill McKibben is not a polite environmentalist. He connects income inequality, the disparities between the global north and south, the California water crisis, the India heat waves, the death throes of the coal industry, the frackers building the Kinder Morgan pipeline. You know that most of our so-called natural gas comes from fracked sources. And the fact that the air we breathe here in Bedford is so much cleaner than the air that is choked upon in Roxbury. Our democracy is choking on environmental inequity. I'm ready to go to the barricades on this, and I think a lot of us are, and Bill, I hope that you will point us in the right direction. Bill is the Schumann Distinguished Scholar at Middlebury College. He was awarded the 2013 Gandhi Peace Prize. Bill's 1989 book, The End of Nature, is regarded as the first book for a general audience about climate change, and it has appeared in 24 languages. He's gone on to write a dozen more books. He is the founder of 350.org, the first planet-wide grassroots climate change movement, which has organized 20,000 rallies around the world in every country save North Korea. What's wrong with North Korea? Spearheaded the resistance to the Keystone Pipeline and launched the fast-growing fossil fuel divestment movement. Who the hell is Bill McKibben? He will be known by what we do or what we fail to do. If you want something juicier about him, I suggest you talk with his mother, who lives here in Bedford, or his brother. They are here today. In his book, Being Liberal in an Illiberal Age, Jack dedicated it to all those wild asses mentioned in the 39th chapter of the book of Job, who roam the barren wilderness in search of every green thing. Bill McKibben, you wild ass, in search of every green thing, on behalf of Jack Mendelson, we welcome you to Bedford.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. It is a great pleasure to be here, and especially on this particular Sunday, and to hear those stories and those words from Reverend Mendelson. And I confess that the reason that I agreed to come this weekend to Bedford was because it was my mother's 85th birthday, which, as we all know, is the new 70. And to celebrate, she asked to go yesterday to the carousel, the new one down on the Greenway there by Faneuil Hall. And it was a beautiful summer day, and it was great fun. Her sons and her daughters-in-law kind of helping her on and off the carousel, and the animals, and all around small children with their parents holding them on. And that kind of lovely, odd kaleidoscope of time, past, future, present, reminded me of that, of course, of that lovely Joni Mitchell lyric, the painted ponies go up and down, we're captives on a carousel of time. It's time that I want to talk about today. We're used to time as a predictable quantity. From the preacher in Ecclesiastes, the greatest formulation of all, the time for every purpose under heaven, a time to reap and a time to sow. Our personal ups and downs of our lives have always taken place against that imperturbable background of time. A great comfort, that huge wheel grinding on imperturbably. The depth of that time measured both geologically and spiritually. I mean, the scientists able to conjure for us the immense depths of time back into the Triassic and the Jurassic and the Permian, and eons that are much too vast for us really to comprehend, but whose sheer scale gives a kind of comfort. And spiritually too. I mean, the Buddhists sometimes talk about how when the Himalayas have been eroded by the brush of a sari, when that brush of a sari has eroded the Himalayas 7 times, then time will have begun. You know, those depths are enormous. But now, all of a sudden, we need to think very differently of our time and of time in general, in our lifetimes. The most important thing that has happened by far, has been that we have left behind the Holocene. Sometime in the last couple of decades, we crossed, as we heated the earth, some imperceptible line, and the Holocene, the benign period of climatic stability that's reigned for the last 10,000 years and that coincided not coincidentally with the rise of civilization, the Holocene is behind us now, and now we are in a new dispensation of time, not as benign and reflecting a very different set of rules. So, just this week, we watched absolutely epic rains across Texas and Oklahoma, a country that had been parched in unprecedented drought and now has seen rainfall like has never been recorded there before. If the rain could all be added up that has fallen across Texas this past week, it would cover the entire state to a depth of about 8 inches. The meteorologists last night were in a debate trying to figure out if this could be described as the 1,000-year storm, the storm that you would expect once every 1,000 years. But at the end, they just threw up their hands and said, really, it's no longer a useful calculation to make because we're so far beyond normal that it makes no sense to sort of calibrate against the past. The past, for those purposes, doesn't exist anymore. This morning, the meteorologists in California announced that the snowpack in the Sierra Nevada has officially gone to zero. Of normal, 0% of normal. There is no snow at all left in the high mountains there that water the most fertile part of our continent come summer. In India this week, it's always hot in India, but the heat wave there this week was one of the most vicious ever. The temperatures were up around 120 with humidity levels off the charts. 2,200 people dead so far. One of the 5 greatest fatalities ever recorded from a heat wave on our Earth. But the point is that the heat wave now is more the rule than the exception. The physiologists announced a study from NOAA, from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, not long ago, that in the tropics, the average human being can now perform about 20% less labor than they could historically because it's become too hot and too humid for people to be outdoors at the height of the day working hard. It just is physiologically impossible. And these kind of changes I could multiply on and on and on. Time, in other words, is no longer our philosophical friend. It's no longer an imperturbable backdrop. Now that backdrop is in a roller coaster of its own, and so the ups and downs of our own lives get scarier as they're transposed against that moving backdrop. More, we now have a very short pitch of time in order to do anything about it. Climate change is not like other social causes that we have faced over time. Causes that, though deeply important, also had a kind of timelessness to them. Jesus said, "The poor you will always have with you," and so far at least it turns out to be shamefully correct. Dr. King always used to say, though he and people working in the civil rights movement like Reverend Mendelsohn had to be very brave, people were shooting at them. They had the consolation of knowing that time was on their side. It was Dr. King that ended almost every speech quoting, I think, from Theodore Parker, saying, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. This may take a while, but we're going to win." We're no longer in that situation. The arc of the physical universe is short, and it bends toward heat. And if we do not quickly accomplish what we need accomplishing, then the point is moot. That is to say, carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere this spring broke the 400 parts per million mark for the first time in many millions of years. That is to say, sea level has now begun a merciless and implacable rise all around the Earth. That is to say that scientists told us this week that the Antarctic has lost enough ice mass now that the effect can be measured subtly but really in shifts in the Earth's gravitational field. The effects of what we're doing right now over this period of 10, 20, 30 years will be felt already in geologic time. For hundreds of thousands of years, people will be able to discern the effect of our very short lives on the larger planet, even if we bring things under control with great speed. But if we don't bring things under control with great speed, then those effects will be absolutely overwhelming, and in our lifetimes. So far, we've raised the temperature of the Earth about 1 degree. The scientists tell us on current trajectories, the way we're emitting things now, that number will be 4 to 5 degrees Celsius, 8, 9, 10 degrees Fahrenheit by century's end. Century's end is not very far away. We were watching, Sue and I, those wonderful kids in the front row singing the Pharrell Williams song when we were coming in. By the end of the century means when those kids are the same age that my mother is today, you know. It's not very far away. And if the temperature of the planet is 8 degrees higher, then it will not be a planet worth living on. We cannot have the civilizations to which we have been accustomed. You cannot grow enough food to make it possible. There will not be enough water. It is an entirely different, hopelessly degraded, and horrible planet if we let that happen. Now, none of this is any great mystery. Scientists have been telling it to us now for 25 years. I mean, I wrote the first book about all this, and it came out a quarter century ago. No one can claim to be struck by the novelty of these observations. You've been hearing about them for many years. And yet, there's been a painfully slow reaction time to this crisis, the opposite of timely. Almost nothing, really, that we've done as a civilization, given the scope of the challenge that we face. In Washington, we've basically had a 25-year bipartisan effort to accomplish nothing, and it's been entirely successful. Even President Obama, in his first term, did next to nothing about climate change, and running for re-election, managed not even to mention the phrase through the entire course of the campaign till with a few days left, Hurricane Sandy made it impossible not to. In his second term, as he begins to worry about legacy, he started to do somewhat more, and in fact has proposed a new set of regulations for coal-fired power plants that will help somewhat. The kind of reaction that 25 years ago would have been a good start to where we need to go. But President Obama last week also offered up for lease new land, federal land in the Powder River Basin of Montana and Wyoming that contains 3 times as much coal and hence 3 times as much carbon as those new regulations will prevent from going into the atmosphere. That is, by a factor of 3, he is undoing his own work. The week before that, he approved drilling for the first time in the Arctic Ocean for more oil, one of maybe the great ironic moment in all of recent human history. I mean, having melted the Arctic, did we sit back and think, maybe now would not be a good time to... We did not do that. We looked at the melted Arctic and said, that'll make it easier to drill for yet more oil. Let's go for it. Not just Obama. Hillary Clinton, running for president, has yet to take a position on any of these questions. Not even to say what she thinks of the Keystone Pipeline, which so many people have worked so hard to try and beat because it too, connecting to the tar sands in Canada, taps into a pool of carbon so great that it would overwhelm any of the efforts we've made so far. These are not the fault of our crazy Congress. Okay? These are all executive decisions. And what they are the result of not wanting to move too fast, not wanting to be too disruptive, not wanting to really divert time in any powerful way, to let it continue to flow on, to not stand in its way. So our job is to live out the challenge of our time. There are moments when time demands answers. Sometimes they're enormously clear. Pearl Harbor is attacked, something has to be done. Sometimes time ripens to the point where it can no longer be avoided. After 100 years, Dr. King makes the civil rights question inescapable, unavoidable, in everybody's face. Now we have to figure out how to change time. We have to figure out how to force the spring, how to make it come much faster than it would otherwise happen. And we have some advantages in this moment if we chose to seize them. The greatest is that the engineers have done their work. In the last 5 years, the price of a solar panel has come down 75%. Okay? That's very good news. It's good news if you have a house in Bedford and you want to put a solar panel on the roof, and you should. But it's far more important news all over the world, where for the first time, billions of people not yet connected to the electric grid, have the opportunity to leapfrog entirely over fossil fuel. And already we see in a couple of countries enormous work in Bangladesh, where I saw the very first solar panel there ever was in the country 20 years ago. They're now installing them at the rate of 60 and 70,000 a month on people's huts and houses, the length and breadth of the country. We could do that across the entire world very quickly if we made sure that the money was available to allow it to happen. It's both a moral and a practical necessity that we should do so, because even if we decided not to do what we're doing, even if we decided to close off the Arctic oil and everything else, the rest of the world has to come along too. But we could do it. We could do it. And if we did do it, the dividends it would yield would be astonishing. Not just in terms of climate change, because there are things that are even more present for people right away. Story yesterday in the New York Times that some of you may have seen about the air in Delhi in India. I was in Delhi in the fall, and I've been there a number of times, but it was Truly horrible. It turns out that half the children in Delhi, which means about 2.2 million children, now have irreversible lung damage from breathing the air. All of which is avoidable because we now have the technology in sun and wind to make it unnecessary to keep burning what they're burning. But we're only going to do this, we're only going to change time if we're able to defeat the forces that want to keep us moving slowly along. And those forces have a name. The powers and the principalities at this time are the fossil fuel industry. They're the Exxons and the Chevrons and the Shells and the BPs and the Peabody Coals and all of those guys. And the work that they do is treacherous in every sense of the word. I was just in Arizona, which should be installing solar panels at a prodigious rate, but isn't because the Koch brothers and their other allies have managed to put in place a series of laws that in large parts of Arizona make it almost impossible, financially impossible, to put a solar panel on your roof. And of course, these are the same forces that plan on purchasing our elections as far into the future as we can see. The Koch brothers, together the richest man on earth, have announced that they'll spend $900 million on the next election, more than the Republican Party, more than the Democratic Party. Koch brothers, party of two. So that's why it was so important that Unitarians divested their holdings from fossil fuel last year. It was a great moment when that happened. And that has inspired many others, that and other early leaders, to follow suit. Just in the last 2 weeks, the Church of England announced that it was divesting from coal and from tar sands. Oxford University followed suit, which made me feel, by the way, very much better about our institution down the street, Harvard's complete recalcitrance and reluctance to do the same. Harvard likes to go on and on about how old it is, but Oxford, they started meeting in the 11th century. So, you know, just last week, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, the single biggest pot of money in the entire world, announced that they were divesting from coal and from tar sands oil. It's an important start. So you guys have already given a lot. You've already done as much as anybody. But from those who've given much, more is regularly asked. So we need you engaged in all the other ways that you can think of. I'm so glad that my old friend and colleague, Marla Markham, who's here someplace. Where are you, Marla? Marla is going to be here to work with Evan to lead a session at 12:30, is that right? About how to talk about these things, people, about how... Because we need you able to explain to your neighbors why you're causing so much trouble, okay? Because we need you causing trouble, and we need it fast, fast, fast. That's the time that I'm talking about. I remember my friend Gus Speth, wonderful, wonderful man with the greatest resume of anybody I've almost ever met. And he founded the Natural Resources Defense Council, and then he was chair of the President's Council on Environmental Quality, and then he ran the entire United Nations Development Program, and then he was dean at Yale, and finally retired a couple of years ago from all of that. And great environmental thinker, but he said, nothing is moving fast enough. We were having this conversation in the D.C. jail, where we were spending a couple of days at the beginning of these protests over the Keystone Pipeline, and we were in adjoining cells so we could talk through the bars. And Gus said, I have spent a lot of time in a lot of important jobs, but none of that seems as important as the time I'm spending here right now in this jail. I'm not saying that you all have to go to jail, though it would be probably useful if, working with Marla, you figured out some ways to do just that in the time ahead. Useful for all of us, and useful for you because in the fullness of time, when people younger than you ask what it was you did to deal with the greatest problem that human beings ever faced, you better have something more to say than we recycled and put up a solar panel on the house and whatever else, okay? I'm not saying you have to go to jail, but I'm saying you have to figure out how to make a big, pivotal, political difference in a very short time. If you've been keeping your powder dry for some reason, maintaining your respectability, now is the time to lose your respectability and gain, in the fullness of time, some sense that you're collaborating with this earth around us in the incredibly important task of keeping it on some kind of real, regular, beautiful schedule. Thank you all very much.
Might as well stay on your feet. For the Earth, Forever Turning, our hymn is number 163. Turn, if you would, to number 478, a prayer of sorrow, which we will read responsively. A prayer of sorrow. We have forgotten who we are. We have alienated ourselves from the unfolding of the cosmos. We have constrained from the movements of the earth. We have turned our backs on the cycles of life. We have sought only our own security. We have exploited simply for our own ends. We have distorted our knowledge. We have abused our power. Now the land is barren, and the waters are poisoned, and the air is polluted. Now the forests are dying, and the creatures are disappearing, and the humans are despairing. We ask forgiveness. We ask for the gift of remembering. We ask for the strength to change. May it be so.
Thank you.